Cats and mythology. That's what we're talking about tonight, Robin. I want to welcome you to the show. Tell us a little bit about what viewers can expect from you. Cats and mythology. That's not a subject that you hear very often.
I'm Robin Mudge, and I'm the blogger behind Playful Kitty. Tonight, we're going to talk about cats and mythology, and we're going to do a lot of talking about history and about some of the great stories from history that have to do with cats. And tonight we're deep diving into some ancient history. So hopefully we'll get through it all.
Well, and maybe someday, if we're on Jeopardy or have a trivia night, like I love trivia nights, this will be useful information. And also for people who love cats, it's good to know about the origins, the mythology behind them. I think it's going to be fascinating. I'm super excited to see it.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to present it. And I just want everybody to know I have my husband to my side who is watching Facebook to see if there's any questions that come up. And we'll definitely answer them if there's time in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, take it away. This is Robin Mudge with Playful Kitty.
All right. So we've already mentioned that tonight we're going to talk about the domestication of cats. We're going to talk about cats in ancient Egypt, across the Middle East, and several cultures in Europe. We're going to talk about China and Japan, and even a little bit of Native American culture. So let me pull up this PowerPoint that I have made here for you. All right. Oh, look, there I am. Okay. Hi, everybody. So we are doing cats in mythology. And my kitties, Manna and Dexter, just wanted to stop by and say hi. Right now, they're busy playing with catnip toys behind me, actually. So you never know. They may decide to crawl across the screen at one of these points and show you that they're here. But that is Manna and Dexter that you're seeing. All right. We're going to talk about the domestication of cats first. Now, the current theory right now is that cats first appeared in the Fertile Crescent, and they moved down into Africa, up into Europe, and then out into India, Japan, China, and Japan. They didn't make it across to the US until they started coming over with all of the travelers from Europe. So I want to introduce you to the ancestor of most domestic cats, the African wildcat. As you can tell, it looks a lot like your cat at home. And sorry, my husband's looking at me funny. It looks a lot like your cat at home. And the name is Felis sylvestris. Sylvestris means of the forest because these cats like to live out in the forested areas. Now, the oldest evidence we have of feline domestication is actually not from ancient Egypt, but from the island of Cyprus. In 2004, they found some cat bones buried with a man's bones on the island of Cyprus, and they determined that those bones were about 9,500 years old. Now, what they said is they don't believe that cats were native to the island of Cyprus either, that they were probably taken there by humans, whether they just happened to stow away on ships or if people took them over there intentionally. But I thought it was really interesting that this actually started in Cyprus. And prior to that discovery of the bones in Cyprus, it was believed that cats were first domesticated in ancient Egypt because there were some mummified cats along with humans found in the range of about 330 BC. Now, a little later on, we found that there was a there were cats buried in a graveyard as part of a religious ceremony before the time of the pharaohs, sometime between 3800 BC and 3600 BC. So kitties have been around with us for a long time. Since we're talking about ancient Egypt, let's talk about cats in ancient Egypt. All right, we're going to talk about how cats were very sacred in ancient Egypt. They were considered protectors because they were able to chase off mice and other disease-carrying pests. It was really important back then to be able to store your grain safely, because you'd have to make it through an entire season with whatever grain that you had. And so when mice would come in, they'd destroy those crops, and cats would come on behind and chase away all of those mice and save that grain. So people were very thankful for that. In royal houses, cats were often treated like people, even being mummified with them and buried with their human counterparts. Now you're looking at the goddess Bast. She was the only cat god in ancient Egypt that was represented by domestic cats. There were a few others that were lions, like her sister Skemet. In the first dynasty, when the pharaohs reigned, Bast was considered to be the daughter of the sun god Ra. Ra was the all-powerful sun god, most important god in the entire pantheon. And Bast was part of this group called the Eye of Ra. Sounds pretty cool, and it probably was. But they were this group of fierce female protectors that balanced out that male god with a female group of goddesses. She's always depicted as a black cat, sometimes as a part human, part cat, sometimes fully cat, sometimes a cat with kittens. She was the goddess of the home and family. She's depicted with the sistrum, which is an ancient rattle or musical instrument, and an aegis, which is a protective necklace that she wears. And she was known to be fierce in this first dynasty. She was a best friend to the people that she loved, but she was a fierce enemy to those that she hated. And she's known for having protected Ra, that sun god, from the god of darkness, the snake. She was able to chop off his head before he could get to Ra. So in the second dynasty, when Egypt became influenced by Greece, she begins taking on the features of Greece's Artemis. And she becomes a little less fierce and a little more domesticated. She gets her name changed to Bastet, so that extra T would be pronounced. She's the goddess of joy and fertility, the protector of home, children, and women. And her temple was placed in a city called Bubastis. And there would be these big festivals like Mardi Gras that were celebrated in her honor. And they'd take place on riverboats. And they'd have women shouting all kinds of lewd things from these boats and lifting their skirts over their heads at people who were passing. And they would also give statues like the ones you're seeing before you of Bastet to the temple as sacrifices, because cats, of course, were not sacrificed. Killing a cat in ancient Egypt could be a death sentence for you. So nobody was killing any kitties there. Now we're going to move on. We're going to talk about cats of the ancient Middle East. Of course, this isn't a map of the ancient Middle East. This is modern Middle East. But I just wanted to give you a good idea. Now, There's plenty of evidence that cats were domesticated in the Middle East, but there were no major mentions of domestic cats in their mythology. Instead, there were lions, all kinds of lions, because they were used as symbols of strength. Kings, like Gilgamesh here in the center, would use lions in their depictions to show how strong and brave that they were. And you can see, if I move my head and everything, you can see the goddess Ishtar, who was one of the main gods of the pantheon in ancient Sumeria. She was the mother of heaven, is what they called her. And she perched upon these lions because she was a fierce woman, and she was known for not taking any junk from any man that came around. Also, you see that there is a lion depicted on the gate of Ishtar, which was a pretty big symbolism for that time too. As far as other ancient writings that took place in the Middle East, you see in the Bible there are no mentions whatsoever of domestic cats, and I've read that no one really knows exactly why, but some believe that because the domestic cat was so linked to the goddess Bast that the Jewish writers didn't want to write about another god's animal, so they didn't write about cats. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've read. There are some Bible verses that use lions, though, because lions, once again, are the symbol of strength in the ancient Middle East, and probably still in the Middle East. But Revelation 5:5 refers to God as a lion, saying, "But one of the elders said to me, 'Do not weep. Behold, the lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and loosen its 7 seals.'" And the Bible also, in 1 Peter 5:8, refers to the devil as a roaring lion. It says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." So pretty strong words coming to us from the ancient Middle East. Let's move on. Sorry, moving that around. Okay, we're going to go straight to the cats of the ancient Greece. Once again, this isn't a map of the ancient Greece, but I wanted to give you an idea of where we're going here. Now, in ancient Greece, cats were considered to be similar to weasels because they already had weasels to help with the removal of rats and mice. So they thought of domestic cats kind of like they do weasels, and they even had some words that made cat and weasel very similar. Even more so when you get to ancient Rome. We're going to kind of cover ancient Rome in this too. In ancient Greece, Bastet travels up and becomes Ailuros. And that's where we get our word allurophobia, for the fear of cats. And she starts taking on traits of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, wild animals, and fertility. Eventually, Artemis becomes this practitioner of magic and the magic arts, and she's able to shapeshift into a cat. Starting to sound familiar? It will sound even more familiar soon. But first, I wanted to tell a little story here that has to do with cats in ancient Greece. The birth of Hercules. What you're seeing before you is a 6th century BC piece of pottery depicting Hercules fighting the Nemean. And the Nemean, as you can see, is a lion-like creature. But we're going to talk about the birth of Zeus, or of Hercules, I mean. And it starts with Zeus, who is the god of gods. He is the king of all the gods in the Greek pantheon. And he's a bit of a player, and he comes to Earth, and he wants this woman named Almene to be his lover. But she refuses. She refuses to even sleep with her own husband until he has won a war. So, being the king of gods that he was, Zeus decided that he was going to take the form of Almene's husband, and he came to Almene bearing all these fruits and spoils of having won a war while her husband was away at war. And in doing so, he tricks Almene into being his lover. And Almene becomes pregnant with Hercules. And then her actual husband comes back, and she's also his lover, and she becomes pregnant with twins. Now, Hera, Zeus's wife, is furious about Zeus's infidelity. And so she goes on this rampage to try and wreak some havoc on the birth of Hercules. First thing she does is declare that the next child to be born is going to be the king. And she causes Hercules' cousin to be born first so that Hercules couldn't be the king. Next, she crosses her arms and her legs, which was a way for her, as the goddess of fertility and the goddess of childbirth. Crossing her arms and her legs meant that the baby couldn't be born. So she squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and Hercules' mother, Almene, is just writhing in childbirth and can't give birth because Hera's got her arms and legs crossed. And so Almene has this really smart friend, and her name is Galanthius. Lots of big names. Galanthius tricks Hera by running around saying, "Hercules is born! He's born! Hooray!" And when Hera sees that she's running around saying that Hercules has been born, even though she's crossing her arms and her legs, she uncrosses them in surprise and shock, and Hercules is born. So Hera retaliates by turning Galanthius into a cat, hoping that she would have a horrible life as a cat. But another goddess, Hecate, the goddess of moon and magic, takes pity on Galanthius and takes her into the underworld to be her assistant. And so here we have Hercules being born and cats being put together with witches for the first time. Most of the mythology is the same between ancient Greece and ancient Rome, with the exception of some names and the fact that in ancient Rome, they had both weasels and snakes who took care of a lot of that rodent population. And so they didn't need cats so much for their rodent population, but they brought them in as pets. Ancient Rome, you start seeing a lot more pets, both cats and dogs. And even the goddess Libertas from Rome is sometimes seen with cats at her feet, and she is the one who is depicted in our Statue of Liberty. Now, another unique thing about ancient Rome was that they had troops who were traveling abroad, moving northward, and once again, those grain stores that they were able to take with them were really, really important. So they befriended a lot of cats along the way to help take care of the rodent populations that might destroy those grain crops while they were out and about traveling to extend the country of Rome. So cats traveled northward, and we take our journey northward too. And we're going to talk about the cats of the Celtic tribes. So this is one of my favorite ones, actually. And there's so many stories, but I cut it down a little bit because I know I'm running out of time. We're going to talk about the Kotchi. Now, it's got two different spellings. One is Irish and one is Scottish, but they're both pronounced Kotchi. And what it means is fairy cat, because this cat is not a real cat, but a fairy creature that is very mischievous. And they say that he's big and black with big claws and a white spot on his chest. That's why I chose this graphic. So we have the farmer's story. This is such a fun story. There's this farmer who sees 8 cats carrying a coffin and an entire parade of cats following behind. And they're all chanting something strange, something about the king of cats being dead. And he thinks this is so weird. So he goes inside his home and he tells his wife, listen, I was just outside and I saw all these cats carrying this coffin and they were saying something about the king of the cats being dead. And all this time, the farmer's cat was listening, sitting in the corner, and he pops up and says, old Tom is dead? Then I must be king, and shoots up the chimney, never to be seen again. I think that one is fun. Also from this set of mythology, we get the answer to why cats have 9 lives. Why 9? Well, they believed that some witches could turn into cats. So these witches must also be Kotchi. And witches who are Kotchi can only turn into cats 8 times. If they turn into a cat the 9th time, they're cats for good. So cats could only have 9 lives because real cats can't live forever. The Kotchi was said to be able to steal the soul of the dead before the gods could claim it. So people at funerals would try to distract the Kotchi with putting catnip all around the home that the funeral was being held in, with the exception of the room that the body was in. And they would stand around telling riddles that they never entirely gave the answer to, because they wanted the Kotchi to be worrying about what that answer might be and not worrying about taking their relative with them. Also, for Samhain, our Halloween, people would lay out bowls of milk for the Kotchi, because the Kotchi would come by, and if you left a bowl of milk, they would give you blessings as a thank you. But if you didn't leave them that bowl of milk, they would curse your cows. That one I have always loved. That one is a really fun one for me. But we're going to keep moving north. We're going to talk about the cats of the Norse tribes. So we're going to talk specifically about the goddess Freya and the cats that pulled her chariot. Now, Freya was the goddess of cats, fertility, war, love, sex, beauty, and magic. And here's how she got her cats. One day she was jostled awake by hearing sounds of thunder coming from outside of her home. And it was Thor outside messing around, playing with things. And so she gave him a good lecture and said, "Stop making so much noise, I'm trying to sleep." So Thor says, "Fine, I'm going to go out and I'm going to fish for a water dragon." Grace says, "Fine, go out and fish for a water dragon then." And so he does. And Thor goes out and he's fishing along the river, and suddenly there's this strange noise, followed by a sweet, sweet lullaby, and a strange noise, and the sweet, sweet lullaby. And eventually he falls into a deep, deep sleep. And when he wakes up, he's angered that someone tried to put him to sleep so that they could harm him. But I think I might be running over time. So that they could harm him. But he goes and he finds this giant cat and two giant baby cats. And it's a father cat singing lullabies to his two baby cats. And the father cat is saying, "It's so hard to be a single father. I'm just trying to calm them down." But Thor gets really mad and gets insulted. And he attacks this father cat. And so the father turns into a bird and flies away. And it turns out that the two baby cats named Trigel and Beigel are given to Freya as a gift. So that is how she gets her cats pulling her chariot. All right, I think I might be running out of time.
Hi, Robin. Thank you. That was an amazing presentation, really educational and a lot of interesting info.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay, we are live, and we just wanted to say thank you again to Robin. And could you go ahead and tell us where we can find you online?
Sure. Once again, I'm Robin Mudge. You can find me at playfulkitty.net. And you can look me up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all under the Playful Kitty.
Oops, very cool. Thank you so much for your time. The next video that we started to play, we're going to go ahead and start that again. I interviewed the Humane Society in Huntsville, and they are the featured organization of the hour. And it turns out that Dr. Shu is going to send the Humane Society some tinctures and samples of their CBD products. So it was really exciting to get those two hooked up. So let's go ahead and replay that video.